Good day, everyone. This is Ivan Belastenko for Idź Pod Prąd, Go Against the Tide TV from Lublin, Poland here. And with us we have a very special guest, Professor Guus Berkhout from Netherlands. Hello, Professor.
Yes, hello.
Thank you very much
nice
for joining.
Nice to be in your program.
Thank you very much for joining us. You are the current president of the Climate Intelligence Foundation, and you started your career back in Shell. That was well over 50 years ago. Like we said, it's probably a different Shell of today's Shell. And you've also served as a professor of acoustics, geophysics, and innovation management in Delft University of Technology. And right now you're like I said, the president of the Climate Intelligence Foundation, which has recently issued a letter which was signed by over 500 different scientists concerning the climate change issue, CO2 and all that stuff, which is what we're going to talk about today. So thank you again, Professor, for being with us and for taking the time to comment on these issues. We just finished with the COP 25 in Spain, so we're going to mention that as well. Which brings me to my first question. We often see pictures of mountain glaciers from 19th and 20th century, and that is compared to what we have today, and the peaks and the amount of snow that is reduced. If there is no global warming, what is the cause of this reduction?
Yes, well, as you know, I'm a geophysicist, and what I do is I collect with my group seismic measurements to make a detailed picture of the geological layers below the Earth's surface. And now it's interesting, these geological layers form an archive that reveals the Earth's climate history. And the climate history clearly shows a continuing sequence of warm and cold periods. So climate change was always present. And very important, no human beings were involved in those changes. Warming and cooling were 100% natural phenomena.
Yes.
And if you, for instance, look at figure 1, this figure shows the temperature picture of the past 2,000 years. And very interesting, around 800 AD, we were in the medieval warm period with higher temperatures than today. And around 1600 AD, we were in a little ice age, colder temperatures than today. Since the end of the little ice age in about 1850, the Earth is warming up again. Not smoothly, but with ups and downs. This is the reason that there is less snow and ice today, because we are warming up. But there is more snow and ice than in 800. So there is nothing new. The natural changes of our climate shows that.
Unfortunately, we don't have pictures from 800 AD, so it's difficult to compare that, maybe drawings. But we hear also of all kinds of doom and gloom stories about the increasing heat waves, the droughts, the floods, hurricanes, etc. Is that not terrifying? Should we not be worried about all this increasing activity?
Yes, we are overwhelmed with stories telling us that climate change causes the end of the world. And even worse, we are told it is our fault because climate change is human-made. Now, if we look this accusation in perspective, we will see that in the last 150 years, the global temperature has increased with about 0.8 degrees. And what did we see? In this period of global warming, the prosperity on our planet has increased significantly. Less poverty, less diseases, better education, better food, etc., etc. So actually, what we see is only good news. So even, if the warming would continue, being, as it said, business as usual, then after another 150 years, we would move, another 0.8 degrees. So that means that we would move at about 15.3 degrees. So what I want to say is, what is the problem? I repeat, what is the problem?
It's quite interesting, Professor, but why do we get this daily message that within 50 years the temperature will rise to, within 3 degrees or even more?
Well, that's a very important question you ask. This dramatic prediction is based on a computer model. If you look at these results, you see that the real temperature measurements, which are made with weather balloons and with satellites, then we see that these computer models, exaggerate the global warming significantly. So the point is, if modeling results and measurements are so very different, then honest scientists acknowledge that their model must be very wrong.
Mm-hmm. And do we know why it's so wrong? Why this model for climate is so wrong?
Yeah, that's another important question. Look, critical scientists, as for instance, famous John Christie, have shown that if we run the climate model, the climate computer model, without the influence of CO2, the model output and the measurements are consistent. They overlap. Now, this tells us that the effect of CO2 on global warming must be small.
So it's important information. How come the public doesn't hear about this, and how come the media doesn't report on this?
Well, that is a point which I really like to be honest on that. The IPCC, as you know, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, refused to include this spectacular research output in their report. Only after a lot of pushing from a group of critical scientists, IPCC was willing to put the outcome of this result in some appendix that was hidden from the outside world.
So that's quite misleading. Does that mean that IPCC can be trusted, in your view?
Well, unfortunately, IPCC, this is maybe important to give you that information. IPCC consists of scientists who are willing to publish results that confirm one message only. Human-made CO2 is the principal cause of global warming. I repeat, human-made CO2 is the principal cause of global warming. Other evidence is not welcome. It has led to IPCC's tunnel vision already more than 30 years. Now, maybe it's also interesting to tell you that it is exactly 10 years ago that ClimateGate occurred. You remember that scandal in the climate world. from IPCC emails, it turned out that the so-called hockey stick graph was the result of scientific fraud. It is a real shame for the climate science community that until today, this fraud was covered up by all kinds of scientific investigation committees.
So it sounds like it's a typical bias in, in research methodology. So that's quite interesting, Professor. What does this fraud mean for other predictions that the IPCC makes, like apocalyptic predictions, for example, like increasing natural disasters and stuff like that?
Yeah, unfortunately, again, we see the same shameful story. The frightening IPCC prediction of natural disasters, do not agree with the real statistics. So, for instance, in 2009, Al Gore predicted that in 2015, so a few years ago, the North Pole would be ice-free and polar bears would be extinct. Yes, today there is less ice on the North Pole due to high temperatures. But remember, that is a natural phenomenon, as I try to explain. Nothing new. And above all, the polar bear, is flourishing more than ever before.
Yeah, exactly.
But bear in mind, also the extreme weather has always been with us. The difference is that today all extreme events in the world can be seen live on our TV screen. However, I repeat, any measurable increase of disasters has not been observed. I repeat it again, has not been observed. Yes, today, the extreme weather damage is higher than in the past because there is much more invested capital in damaged areas. However, if you look at the casualties, they are spectacular decreased. So the conclusion is, why telling us these frightening stories?
Yeah, probably to scare us into looking for saviors.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the UN Climate Change Conference in Spain, the COP25. Actually, COP in Polish means a kick in the behind. It's funny. So in Madrid, there was a
conference of parties. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a total failure. There was no real plan forward agreed on. Also, no condemnation of China, one of the world's biggest polluters, and total contradiction to this whole CO2 emission madness that is going to end the world. They have loads of coal in there, and that doesn't seem to bother them. So did you expect that this is going to be the outcome of this conference?
Yes, I was present in Madrid, and yes, I expected such a failure. In all 25 COP conferences, the UN tells the frightening story that human-made CO2 emission will cause the end of the world, and that we only can avoid such a disaster if we reduce the CO2 emissions significantly. Climate policy is all about CO2. And again, I don't like to say it, but this UN message is pure misleading. It's pure fraud. In the situation of business as usual, Science does not tell us that mankind is rise to the end of the world. And science does also not tell us that by turning the CO2 emission knob, mankind is able to control the Earth's climate. These UN messages have nothing to do with the truth. Actually, if I may say, add one thing more to it, actually, the truth is that CO2 emission is a blessing to our planet. I repeat, it's a blessing to our planet. Because CO2 is the basic molecule for all life on Earth. With more CO2 in the atmosphere, the Earth becomes greener. And there were some very interesting publications recently, where we see that the CO2 in the atmosphere is increasing, but at the same time, we see that the Earth becomes greener. And that is very, very good news.
Yes. I remember seeing images of satellites next to coal power plants, and there's a lot of green in the area as well. So that also confirms what you're saying. Professor, can you tell us more about CLINTEL, about this group that you are the president of?
Well, CLINTEL stands for Climate Intelligence Foundation. My colleague Marcel Krok and I founded it about half a year ago. CLINTEL informs the public about the full story of climate change. And we point at the overwhelming misleading information from the UN and from the EU. We also make clear that the energy transition to wind and solar energy will ruin the energy infrastructure of most countries, and it will increase the poverty in the world. CLINTEL warns that the current European climate policy is ruining the economy of the European Union. And as you can see, that is a very serious warning. We have recently formulated the World Climate Declaration. And it may be interesting to tell you that in a very short time, more than 800 prominent scientists and professionals, including a Nobel Prize winner in physics, have signed this declaration. So it's very interesting, if I may summarize it. CLINTEL's slogan is, there is no climate emergency. And CLINTEL's message is, more CO2 is a blessing for planet Earth. And CLINTEL's mission is, adapt to climate change instead to combat it. And that is what CLINTEL will do in the near future.
That sounds great. Finally, Professor Berkhout, what is your message to the people of this country, to laymen and also the leaders of Poland?
Well, my advice one is, stop listening to the panic stories of the UN and the EU. These stories are based on IPCC's erroneous scientific model. Our slogan is, as I said before, there is no climate emergency, no panic at all. And my advice too would be, the prescribed medicine by politicians, CO2 reduction is worse than the diagnosed disease. Yeah, a modest temperature rise. Yeah, as I showed. So please don't ruin your national energy system. And then my advice 3 is don't confuse environmental pollution with climate change. Environmental pollution requires good stewardship, and climate change requires smart adaptation. Yeah, so don't confuse them. Once again, yeah, my last point would be to your people, to your country. Once again, more CO2 is a blessing for all of us.
Yes, I think Donald Trump once commented that, I'm not sure if it was exactly his words, but something along the lines that there is this make the planet great again versus make your country great again. So I think it illustrates it quite well, where the globalists want us to focus on the whole planet and trying to save this planet from alleged doom. But I think it's more important for each individual country to take care of its own affairs rather than chase some imaginable ghosts in the form of CO2 and climate change, looming disasters. So I think that's a good point. Thank you very much, Professor Berkhout. Any last words before we finish for today?
Yes, I would say this, very important also for your country. Yeah, climate change, yeah, is not a matter of human beings. Climate change, yeah, is a natural phenomena. It was always with us. If we are going to spend trillions, yeah, of dollars, trillions of euros to try to control the climate of the earth, then we would really spoil money in a massive way. Don't do that. Don't try to control the climate, but try to adapt to the climate. And every country has its own environment to do that at its best. As you know, the Dutch, for instance, yeah, they had always to fight, yeah, against sea level, against sea level rise. Yeah, but we were always successful in coping with that because we were not trying to lower the sea level. That's impossible. We have tried, yeah, to protect ourselves against it. That's what we call adaptation. And that's what every country should do. And that is also what your country should do.
Professor Berkhout, thank you very much for finding time to speak with us. We wish you a Merry Christmas and that much success to your, to the group and the work that you do. Thank you very much for joining us. This is Ivan Belstenko for Idź Prąd, Go Against the ITV. Thank you for being with us. Until next time.
Thank you.